When it comes to full-size pickup trucks, GMC has always offered one of the top-selling vehicles in this segment with the Sierra nameplate. In fact, if you are comparing the Silverado and the Sierra, my personal favorite has always been the GMC for its professional-grade styling that looks a little bit more modern and sophisticated, and its high-quality interiors, especially if you look at the luxury-loaded Denali trims. Now, last year, GMC introduced their first-ever all-electric version of the Sierra called the Sierra EV. It's built off of their latest Ultium architecture with a massive 200 kilowatt hour plus battery pack, up to 760 horsepower, and up to 460 miles of range. This essentially offers one of the longest ranges that you're going to find in the electric truck space. Now, as you can see, this week we are testing out the ultimate version. This is a 2025 GMC Sierra EV Denali with the max range battery pack. And the big question I want to answer, for those of you who are looking for an all-electric pickup truck that offers enough luxury, technology, and range where you can actually tow heavy loads on long distances, has GMC managed to create the ultimate electric luxury truck? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling differences between this vehicle and its sister car, the Chevrolet Silverado EV, let me go ahead and pop the front hood of this vehicle, the hood, and reveal to you guys the storage space. Because as you guys know, there is no motor underneath here to take up space. So instead, GMC, just like the Chevrolet counterpart, gives you a pretty sizable frunk, although it's not quite as large as what you're going to get from its main rival, the F-150 Lightning. Now, as you can see, underneath this front trunk storage area, you're going to find roughly 11 cubic feet of space. 11 cubic feet is still very sizable, although, again, the F-150 Lightning offers around 14 cubic feet of space, so it's around 3 cubic feet smaller. There are some usual, options here, like you have an actual power outlet in here, you have an LED light, you have a little escape hatch button in case somebody locks you in here. But if I remember correctly, the F-150 actually had an underfloor storage as well. As you can see, GMC doesn't give you that, you just have a front trunk. And it's not quite as deep as the one in the Escalade IQ. The Escalade has an even longer hood, which allows you to basically go even further into the deeper well of the storage area. But since we're underneath here, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain specs, because at launch currently, the Sierra EV is only available basically in the Denali trim in the extended range and max range battery pack. For 2026, GMC will expand the lineup to include an Elevation, an AT4, and a Denali trim. But this model that we're showing you here has the max range battery pack, which means we have a 205 kilowatt hour usable capacity lithium-ion battery pack, and its dual electric motors with electronic all-wheel drive is basically offering up to 760 horsepower and 785 foot-pounds of torque. You only get that power figure if you have it in its max power mode. GMC doesn't announce what the power figure is without it in max power. I would estimate it's around 600-ish horsepower, which is pretty similar to the Cadillac Escalade IQ that I just most recently tested. It all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission, and like I said, electronic 4-wheel drive is going to be included. GMC says in max power mode, you should be able to hit 60 in under 4.5 seconds. We got 4.2 seconds the last time we tested this vehicle out in California, I believe. Top speed is around 112 miles an hour. And this vehicle, properly equipped, can tow up to 10,000 pounds. The towing capacity will increase to just over 12,000 pounds for 2026. Now, the curb weight, this is built off of a dedicated EV architecture, one that it shares with the GMC Hummer EV. So it's a heavy truck weighing in at over 4.5 tons or around 8,800 pounds, which is about 1,000 pounds heavier versus most of its rivals that have a much smaller battery pack. Again, if you guys wait until next year, GMC will introduce a less powerful version, but also a much less expensive version. And they'll also introduce a standard range battery pack. If you guys want to save about 10,000 bucks, you can get the extended range battery pack today, which will reduce the range to around 390 miles. But let's go ahead and close up the hood of this vehicle, which, as you can see, there's a button there. If you push that button, that will electrically close the hood of the truck. And let's go ahead and talk about the exterior styling, because let's be honest here, I always have thought GMC's look better versus their Chevrolet equivalent. That's a personal preference of mine. This vehicle shares an architecture with the GMC Hummer, of course, but it certainly has its own unique look to it. Now, my particular test car is not one that I like to show on camera because it doesn't show well, but this is, I believe, the Black Raven, I think, exterior color. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but it's basically one of the included colors. It certainly looks good in the Denali trim level here, because the Denali always is the luxury-oriented version of the GMC brand, or it's a sub-brand, of course. The grille, as you can see, is massive, although it's completely closed off. You also have an illuminated GMC logo. It's one of the few GMC vehicles that have an illuminated logo. It gives this truck a really interesting light signature at night. It also has this LED light that kind of surrounds the border of the grille, which again gives it a very distinctive look. The LED headlights actually are located lower. This is just the daytime running light and the turn signal. You can see it has a sequential design, looks really modern, sophisticated. The headlights again are down here. They are a projector style LED, and then go further down, that's the LED fog light. It's a really unique design, but also very trendy. And I have to say, guys, I love the look of this truck. It looks much better versus the Silverado EV RST that I tested a few months ago. The Denali trim, as you can see, has some lower front air dams that aid with the aerodynamics. I couldn't find the ground clearance of this particular truck, but just know the AT4 version, which I'll be testing out next month, will have an additional 2 inches of suspension. You can raise and lower the suspension of this truck, obviously, with the air suspension, I believe, up to a couple inches. Now, moving around the side profile, this is a big truck. It's only offered in one configuration, crew cab with a 5-foot 11-inch long bed, which means the wheelbase is around 145.7 inches with a 233-inch long overall length. This is a little bit longer versus the gas-powered version of the Sierra, although remember, the two vehicles don't share an architecture. This is built off of a unibody Ultium battery electric platform versus a body-on-frame. That's something that's different versus the F-150 Lightning, which Ford basically plucked out the gas engine and replaced it with batteries and an electric motor. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a GM Denali truck without big wheels. These are the standard 24-inch wheels, 24-inch wheels, that's right, on the Denali trim. They're running on a pretty massive 275 by 50 R24 Michelin all-season tire. Brakes, I believe, are a little over 14 inches in the front and rear. You have a 35-inch tall tire with a 24-inch tall wheel, basically. Again, adaptive air suspension. There's also these clearance lights or these marker lights along each of the rear fenders, of course. I love the full paint finish. This black exterior, as you can see, has a lot of reflections in it, but no metallic shine. So it's not like a clear coat or a pearly black exterior. You can see the mirrors are power folding, they're huge, and they also have cameras and turn signal indicators. The mirrors themselves also have the magnification, just like the Escalade IQ, and that's because the EPA classifies this vehicle as like a commercial style vehicle because of how heavy it is. You can see the glass roof is also included. It sadly does not open up to vent air, nor does it have a retractable shade, but it is a very dark tint that will reflect all the UV lights, and it actually does a pretty good job even on a hot summer day. You can see backing away from the truck, I really love the proportions, but you can really tell this is not a body-on-frame vehicle because there's no clear cut line between the cab and the bed. A traditional body-on-frame truck would have that. This is, again, a unibody with an all-independent suspension, front and rear. Again, not typically what you find in trucks, but this is the electric hub space. All games, or basically all bets are off when you go to the EV world. Things are going to be a little different. You can see the taillights, slightly more unique for the Sierra EV versus the Silverado. They also have the same sequential turn signal. They are a full LED taillight design. Looking at the rest of the rear, you can see big badging there, GMC badge, which I appreciate how it's black as opposed to the red. And then, of course, large Denali badge there. The EV, Sierra EV is really your only indication that this is electric, along with no visible exhaust tips. You can see the tow package, or the tow hitch is already included. I mentioned earlier this will tow up to 10,000 pounds. And then I forgot to mention also, here is the charge port door. When you want to charge this vehicle, it is among the quickest charging EVs you're going to find in the segment. That's because it has such a huge battery pack. The onboard charger is 19.2 kilowatts, which means it charges about twice as fast on a level 2 if you have the correct amperage and charger. Basically taking around 10 hours, but if you don't have the 19.2 capable charger, it'll probably take around 16 hours. This vehicle will accept up to 350 kilowatts on a DC fast charger. That's because it runs on the 800-volt architecture, but because of the battery is so big, you can only add about 100 miles of range in about 10 minutes. On a level 3, when I tested it, from around 5% going up to 80%, it took me around 40 minutes. So again, that was pretty low in terms of its charge, but it's still a quicker charging EV than the F-150 Lightning. At the same time, however, the battery pack is almost twice as large, so that's one of the reasons why it does need to be a quicker charging EV. Now, of course, being a GMC, it has their multi-pro tailgate design, which, as you can see, you can fold down this little area here and then open this up to create like a bed extender kind of, or you can also fold that up back up and then open it up the traditional way, and you can also push this again and you can kind of create a little step here, which is great to help short people get into the bed, like, you know, myself. As you can see, the trunk or the bed of this truck is around 5 feet 11 inches in the depth. It's also a pretty wide truck at around 84 inches. Chevy says, or GMC, I'm sorry, says that you can carry around 1,500 pounds of payload capacity in the bed itself. It also includes a spray and bed liner, which I love. And then as you can see, that little mid-gate area, just like in the Silverado EV, folds down, where you can fold it down basically in that little small area, or you can also take out the glass and fold down completely. GMC says that with the seats, or with that mid-gate folded down, you can actually carry items over 10 feet in length in this truck. That's incredible. That's, again, a really unique feature that makes this one of the most flexible trucks on the market, one of the most practical and usable trucks. But again, it shares that feature with the Silverado EV, which is kind of a feature that GM took from the previous generation Chevrolet Avalanche. Now moving on to the interior of this 2025 GMC Sierra EV Denali. Before we get inside, however, let me show you guys the key fob. As you can see, this is GM's latest intelligent access key with lots of buttons here for the lock, unlock, remote start. You can also pop open the tailgate, open up the front, the hood of the vehicle, and of course activate a panic. You can also use your phone as a key, as well as having access to the My GMC app, where you can ping the vehicle, activate the climate control from there, look at the charging state. So all that technology stuff that you expect from an electric truck. Now as you approach the door handle, you can see it is a traditional pull style as opposed to those retractable ones. If I push that little chrome button, that will lock the doors. They'll also electrically fold in the mirrors. If you want to unlock the door, there's no sensor on the back of the handle. You have to actually touch the button again, and that will unlock the door for you. Now, my particular test truck has the After Dark premium synthetic leather material. So this is a seat material that's unique to the Denali trim. The seats also adjust in 12 different ways for the driver and passenger. It also includes a two-way or two-person memory function. These seats are also heated and ventilated, although it is missing a massage function. I think a massage function would have been nice, especially at this price point. You can see the door panel materials have some decent quality. You can see this is a soft touch injection molded plastic, some alloy trim, some piano black trim here, silver painted plastic door handles. You can see there's perforated leather, synthetic leather on these little touch points where you'd rest your elbows. Also some nice perforated leather here. There's an upgraded Bose stereo on this truck, which sounds decent if you guys are an audiophile. And then down here, there's a hard touch plastic with plenty of additional door storage. But this truck certainly has a much nicer and much more unique interior versus the Silverado EV, which I found the interior to be really cheap feeling in the Chevy, considering the price point. As you can see, traditional running boards, although I'm surprised they're not the retractable style, there's no handle here to grab onto, so you'll have to grab onto the steering wheel to help shorter people like myself hop in. But once you get inside and then shut the door has a pretty solid sounding thunk, and as you can see, if you have the key fob on you, shut the door, sit your butt in the seat, the car will automatically turn on. There's no button that you need to push to start the vehicle. That's very much what Rivian does, what Tesla does, so GMC is again trying to, play in the all-electric truck space. So looking at the rest of this cabin, I'm really pleased with what GMC has done here, because literally for like $2,000 or $3,000 more versus the Silverado, you get an interior that is much nicer in terms of the build quality, in terms of the materials. I also like the layout of the screens. You can see the steering wheel has the Denali badge there as opposed to the GMC badge, some silver painted plastic. There's a paddle here to engage max regen. All Sierra EVs come standard with the Super Cruise functionality, although for 2026 it'll be optional on the lower trims to get the price down. You have a power tilt telescoping wheel, of course, where you can get a nice comfortable driving position, a heads-up display. You have an 11-inch display here for the instrument panel and a 16-point-inch display here for the center display. It has Google built in with Google Assistance with access to the Google Play Store. Of course, the GPS function is Google as well. It looks great. It's basically what you find in your computer at home, for example. You also have route planning on charge stations where it'll tell you where you need to charge, the availability of the charge stations. It'll do that when you activate a destination, so you don't even have to think about it. What it lacks, however, is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and that's because GM still refuses to put it in their EVs. They're claiming their native software is better. If I go to the home display here, you can see there is Waze and Spotify and Plug Share. So you can download apps, but no Apple Music, because Apple and Google don't play nice together. And that's one of my gripes with this truck. Going back to the materials, you can see the upper dash has a soft touch injection molded plastic with some faux stitching, real wood. I love the wood in this truck. It feels expensive. It feels real. It smells real. You have some chrome and metal accented trims along the traditional dash vents, which I love. And then you can see big toggles to control your climate. There's dual zone climate, a volume knob here, of course, where you can actually adjust the volume as opposed to having to use a touch sensitive button. There's also buttons on the steering wheel for the Super Cruise, for the heated steering wheel, of course. And then down here in the center stack area, you can see nice leather and additional storage. That's your wireless phone charging pad. If I want, I can push this open to reveal a deeper storage with 2 USB-C charging ports. And you can see cup holders, which is nice. You can, I believe, slide this back to reveal an even deeper storage area, which is pretty nice. Again, most trucks offer that feature there. And then you can see the center console area is huge. I can fit all my camera gear in there. It has a USB-C charging port, a nice padded armrest. And then if you want to see the cameras, you can see full 360 camera included on this truck. Multiple views, of course, along with a trailer view and a bed view there. Quality and resolution is pretty average for the segment. I wish that it took up more of the screen, but it's still a very nice feature. Your drive modes are going to be located in the screen here. There's 4 different modes along with your max power mode. If you activate that, it has some graphics. It basically unleashes the full 760 horsepower. You can activate that in any of the modes, I believe. In the My mode here, you can kind of custom tailor the steering, the suspension, the acceleration feel, and the motor sound. There is technically no sport mode. Dedicated sport mode, so to activate the sport you have to go into the My mode and put everything in adrenaline or sport. So that's kind of a little go around there. Your air suspension you can adjust from these little toggles here, along with your lane keep assist. You can also open and close the front trunk or the hood from there. It's power actuated, of course. And then the rest of this infotainment system is pretty snappy and easy to use. Google is fantastic. Android Automotive works well. I just wish it had CarPlay and Android Auto. Of course, your headlight controls are in the screen here. As you can see, you pull this up. That's where you can access them here, along with a few other functions. The crab walk and the rear steering is also over here. If you want to activate the crab walk, you can do so right there. The rear steering basically is an automatic setting most of the times. And you can also use this vehicle as a power station if you want to plug into or power some outside things if you're on a campsite, for example, or power your home. So all of that is pretty much what you've seen in the Sierra or in the Silverado EV. It's carried over into this truck, but I much prefer the layout of this and prefer the interior of this. It's just a much more luxurious feeling cabin versus its Chevy counterpart. Now, the glove box you can see is a bin style. It's damped but not lined with felt. There's some hard touch plastic here. And then above me, you can see there's a woven material for the headliner. You have some LED map lighting, but no ambient lighting in this truck. That's the one thing it should have considering the price point. The glass roof is also nice. It is a very dark tint with UV reflections. Sadly, no retractable shade, and you can't open it to vent air, but you can't even get a full roof like this in the gas-powered version of the Sierra, so kind of keep that in mind. The seats, like I mentioned earlier, synthetic leather. Comfortable and supportive, not much in terms of lateral bolstering, and I really wish it had a massage function, but the cooled and heat function works really well. So overall, the cabin, definitely a big upgrade over the Chevy version, feels a lot more luxurious, more befitting of its 6-figure price tag, but it still doesn't have quite the full luxury feel as the last Rivian R1T that I tested. I also haven't had a chance to test the Cybertruck, but this feels, I think, a little bit nicer than the current F-150 Lightning. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area, and I can show you guys what that space is like. Because this is a huge truck, you have a massive, and I mean massive, backseat area. First of all, the door opens huge, so you can get, a child seat back here pretty easily. Material quality is pretty much the same. Soft touch leather, aluminum, piano black, leather padded over here, hard touch plastic here with some additional storage. And then Chevy says you have a maximum of 44 inches of legroom. I keep saying Chevy. GMC says you have a maximum of 44 inches of legroom, which is huge. You have a completely flat floor, obviously. And then these seats, you can see the same synthetic leather with the contrast stitching and piping. These seats are also 3-level heated, but not ventilated. You can, of course, flip the seat up, I believe, but actually, you cannot flip the seat up, although I think you can because there's a little storage there. Actually, yeah, that's how you do it. You flip it up here. You can access some storage over here. It doesn't flip up like in some gas-powered trucks, but it does it like this because of a neat little party trick. So if you fold this down, I'm going to try to do it with one hand. It's a little difficult, but pull on this little strap here, which I may have to actually hold the camera here and then pull that with my other hand. This will flip down, and then if you push this button here, you can see this opens up to basically allow you to have an extension for the cargo area into the cab. This again allows you to basically put items up to 10 feet long. If you want, you can take this little window out, you can store it behind the seat back, and then you can fold down the entire portion. Most people will probably just do it this way. This is the easier way to open and close this. It just makes it pretty simple. Again, the seatbelt kind of gets in the way. Close that up. You can see it's relatively simple, but a little hard to do when you're trying to do it with one hand. But let's go ahead and get back here and show you guys the space. Now, as you can see, once I close the door, this is my driving position, and this is literally like limo style legroom back here. It's huge. I mean, 44 inches is among the best that you're going to find in the segment. There's even plenty of space here for the center passenger where, because the truck is so freaking wide, you can easily fit 3 wide American body frames in this backseat area. You do have cup holders, rear seat air vents, some storage here along with actual power outlet there, along with 2 USB-Cs, 3-level heated seats. Like I said, cool seats would have been nice, however, and then there's no retractable sunshade. Some competitors, I believe, do offer that, along with the no ability to recline this seat. But again, it has that fold down ability, which is nice. Fold down the armrest there. You have 2 cup holders, of course. And then in terms of the headroom space, you can see I have maybe a solid 3 inches of additional clearance. So the sunroof does, or the glass roof does take up a little bit of space, but overall, as you can see, if you plan to use this as a family vehicle, this is basically as practical as the gas-powered version of this truck, although I think this truck actually has a little bit more legroom versus a internal combustion Sierra. So here we are back behind the wheel of the 2025 GMC Sierra EV. You know, I want to actually refer to this architecture as kind of like the ultimate Ultium. It's built off of the GMC Hummer EV pickup truck chassis. I also recently spent a week with the Cadillac Escalade IQ, and this car, of course, is the sister vehicle to the Chevrolet Equinox EV. And I have to say, I wasn't really the biggest fan of the Equinox EV, and the Hummer EV is just super excessive, but what this truck excels at is essentially offering the most range that you're going to find in an electric pickup truck. This has easily over 100 miles of range versus most of its rivals. We are driving around in the Denali with the max range battery pack. So we have basically a massive 205 kilowatt hour unit. Starting off this review with 97% state of charge, the battery, or the trip computer, is showing 452 miles. It shows 460 when it's at a full charge. I'll talk about what I'll get in my real world testing toward the end of the driving scene. But GMC says when you have it in max power mode, which basically you activate by tapping the drive mode here and activating the Thor's hammer there, you'll have a total of 760 horsepower, 785 foot-pounds of torque, good for 0 to 60 in around or just under 4.5 seconds. So let's see what we can get here on our usual stretch of road. I have it in its my mode. Let's go ahead and floor it. Ooh, ho, 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 ho. This thing literally torque steers everywhere, and you have to kind of hold the wheel tightly to keep it going in a straight line. But we just got 0 to 60 in 4.14 seconds. 4.14 is pretty fast for a vehicle that weighs 8,800 pounds. Now, if you guys are comparing the rest of the EV truck segment, this is definitely among the slowest. I mean, the Hummer will easily do it in 3.3 seconds. The Rivian R1T is, for me, the speed king. I haven't had a chance to test out the Cyber Beast, but the Rivian does it in 2.8 seconds. The Lightning will do it in around 3.7 seconds. It's still, 4.1 is nothing to sneeze at. It's crazy fast considering this truck weighs like over 4.5 tons, which is just insane to me how heavy it is. But let's try another run here. This time it's slightly more uphill. Oh! This time the truck, oh man, when you start to go above 60, really you have to fight to keep the truck going in a straight line. There's torque steer with this thing, which I don't particularly love. I hated it in the Cadillac Escalade IQ. I don't like it in this truck. It just makes the acceleration feel, I guess, a little bit more comical, but at the same time, a little more scary because the front lifts up so high, the truck literally feels like it's going to launch itself. But we got 4.35 seconds there. That's with it more going slightly uphill. So it's pretty similar to the last time that I got in the the Silverado EV RST. The Cadillac Escalade IQ was actually a little bit slower. I got 4.5 seconds in that vehicle, and that's because the Cadillac has 10 less horsepower in its VMAX mode, and the Cadillac is around 200 pounds heavier than this truck already. So the Cadillac's over 9,000 pounds. This is around 8,800 pounds. But the beauty about it being electric is anytime you put your foot down, it just kind of takes off, and it also creates that fake noise that's enhanced when you have it in its max power mode. But man, I really cannot stand how I'm fighting to keep the truck going in a straight line. It's just constantly wanting to torque steer all over the road. So when you're driving a vehicle that's already 84 inches wide, that weighs 4.5 tons, and it starts to, fight you to go in a straight line, it can certainly make a novice driver a little scared when they put their foot down. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, thankfully, the four-wheel steering in this truck, it's such a big vehicle, shrinks the overall size when you're behind the wheel because it does significantly cut down the turning radius, and it makes the truck feel like a smaller vehicle. So that's going to help with the maneuverability, especially if you're driving it around tight parking lots. Like, you can feel the rear wheel steering doing its job to kind of help the truck, you know, make those turns on a dime where you don't have to be fighting it so much. Now, I want to try out the 0 to 60, taking it out of the max power mode, because I believe without it in max power, it's making around 600-ish horsepower, 600-ish horsepower. GMC doesn't quote that number, but I believe the Silverado EV, when I took it out of its wide open watts mode, did it in around 5.2 seconds. So let's go ahead and see what we can get it in this truck here with essentially, which should have basically the same power ratings. Feels noticeably slower for sure. Still wandering all over the road though, 4.92 there. So putting it in the max power mode will reduce the 0 to 60 to the low 4-second range versus the high 4-second range. So again, pretty good performance, especially if you're coming from a gas-powered Sierra, but a lot of the other EV competitors are noticeably faster versus this truck, so kind of keep that in mind. But we are rolling around in the Denali trim with the big 24-inch wheels. It's got an adaptive air suspension, of course. The ride quality in this truck is actually not as hateful as I thought it was going to be. Now, again, it is a 24-inch wheel. You're going to feel the bumps come through when it's a pretty, you know, crappy road surface that you're on. But I actually find the ride quality of this truck to be even better versus the Cadillac Escalade IQ that I just recently tested, which is shocking to me. A Cadillac should not have a worse ride quality than this truck, but this vehicle is a little bit longer and with a slightly longer wheelbase versus the Cadillac, so kind of keep that in mind. Visibility out of this truck is, you know, it feels like a tank. You have this big commanding view, of course, that you have to look over the hood. The A-pillar is thick. The view out of the side is fine. The view out of the rear is also good, but I love the digital camera rearview mirror. It kind of helps with that visibility, of course. The truck is just so damn wide. It's 84 inches wide, so it takes up the entire chunk of the road, basically. If you're on a narrow city street, you're not gonna like the way this feels. The seats are also pretty comfortable. This is a synthetic leather. It doesn't feel as nice as GMC's plush real leather that you'll find in like other vehicles that are, you know, wearing the Denali badge, but they don't have much in terms of aggressive bolstering. I also wish this truck had massaging seats. That's something you can get on the F-150, for example. I think at this price point, it should have massaging seats, but at least there's not a single squeak or rattle in this interior, and it's a much higher quality interior versus the Silverado EV that I recently tested. I'm still annoyed at the fact that there's no CarPlay or Android Auto, although this 17-inch display is certainly nice. Wow, I can actually pull up the camera. That was an accident while I'm driving. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the range, because in the Silverado EV, I was driving it in more colder temperatures. It did around 420-ish miles of range. The Cadillac Escalade IQ I most recently tested, did it around 415 miles of range. This truck is definitely the range king. Now, in ideal driving conditions, which is very ideal, it's like been in the 70-degree temps all week, I got around 430-ish miles of range, 430 to 440. Remember, the truck is 460 miles of range rated, which makes this truck the longest range test that I've ever gotten. This is the best range that I've ever gotten, full stop, in my real world testing, and that's incredible. This truck has no range anxiety. In fact, it is the cure for range anxiety among pickup trucks, because it's probably going to get better range versus the gas-powered versions of this truck, or technically they're not even the same platform. Although you can get a diesel in the ice-powered Sierra, and that's probably going to get you even better range than this. But still, 440-ish miles of range is incredible. So this truck definitely wins the range race. It's also going to be one of the few trucks that can tow actual heavy loads and do it in considerable distances. So this gets a little bit better range than the Silverado EV, although the Silverado that I tested was rated at 440 miles of range. Still good, but this is about 100 more miles of range, 120 more miles of range versus what you'll get in an F-150 Lightning or even a Rivian R1T. I haven't had a chance to test out the Cybertruck yet. I'm hoping I can do so sometime later this year. So overall, the Sierra EV is definitely going to be my favorite between the Silverado EV. There's just a couple of issues that I have with this truck. It should have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That's annoying that it's missing that. I need GM to reduce and tune out the torque steer when you're putting your foot down with this truck. It's just unacceptable to me for a truck that's this heavy, you know, to have the ability to kind of, you know, be pulling the truck in different directions when you're driving. It's a safety concern of mine, especially among novice drivers. The ride quality is pretty good. It's quiet in here, which is, you know, what you expect for an all-electric truck. But other than the fact that it just feels massive, which you'll eventually get used to if you're used to driving big trucks, this is definitely among my favorites in terms of all-electric trucks. Just a couple of things that need to be tuned out. The Rivian is probably an easier daily driver, but this is one that you're gonna appreciate more because it's gonna have more interior space and have the ability to tow more and go or do so on further distances. Now, between the Chevy Silverado and the GMC Sierra, these vehicles have always been number 2 in the sales race for full-size half-ton pickup trucks. So it makes sense for GMC to also introduce a fully electric version of their truck. And after spending a full week with the latest Sierra EV Denali, just like the Silverado EV that I tested a few months ago, this vehicle certainly is going to be the range king. As you guys saw, you can easily get over 420 miles of real-world range in ideal weather conditions with this truck, allowing it to essentially be the longest range vehicle that I've ever tested for electric pickup trucks, which is a good thing because if you plan to actually tow heavy loads and haul around stuff, you're gonna want that extra range. Although again, it does come with some downsides. In terms of the driving dynamics, 0 to 60 in around 4.1 seconds isn't the fastest truck on the segment. However, it is fast enough, especially considering the fact that this truck weighs, again, over 4.5 tons. And you feel that weight every time you drive this thing. It takes a little bit longer for it to stop. It takes up the entire lane, and it also just feels heavy every time you put your foot down. The interior is just a huge upgrade compared to the Silverado. I really didn't like the Silverado EV's cheap interior, especially considering the price tag. GMC really throws in the nicer leather materials, the real wood. I think the design of the GMC's exterior and interior is also better. Backseat is also huge. Love the multi-pro tailgate system and the midgate that folds down, giving this vehicle, again, one of the most practical trucks that you're gonna find in the EV space. And while the front trunk isn't as big as some of its competitors, it makes up for that, of course, with the big bed and, of course, the ability to go into the cab to extend the length of this truck on the inside so you can actually carry heavier items. The ride quality also is surprisingly good, and I really like how GMC has tuned the ride and handling balance. You know, they've done what they can considering how big this truck is. Really, the downfall of the Sierra EV is when you come to the pricing, because while GMC managed to sell a little under 300,000 gas-powered Sierras last year, they only did around 1,800 Sierra EVs last year. Now, granted, that's of course with a short model year in terms of sales, lack of availability. GM has been picking up their production of their Ultium-powered EVs over the last few months. And so far this year, as of the first quarter of 2025, they've managed to sell around 1,200 trucks so far. I wouldn't be surprised to see GMC eventually settle in at around 10 to maybe 20,000 units in their first full year of sales. And that should ramp up, and it should even get better because for 2026, they're actually going to reduce the price of the Sierra EV significantly. Because right now, if you want to buy a 2025 model, they start at just under $90,000. And that's because you can only buy it as a Denali trim, the fully loaded Denali trim with the extended range battery pack at around 10,000 if you guys want the max range battery pack, which basically gives you an extra 70 miles of range. For 2026, GMC will be introducing the base elevation trim with a smaller standard range battery pack, although they haven't announced the range of that smaller battery. And then of course, there'll be an AT4 trim along with the Denali. The 2026 model year is gonna start at around $62,000. So a near $30,000 price reduction is going to significantly widen the appeal of this truck, because my test truck here with the max range battery pack and the destination charge, you're looking at an as tested price of $102,000. Over 100 grand just doesn't seem worth it to me. I think it's a little too pricey. But for 2026, if you want this same exact truck, GMC has actually reduced the price by about $10,000. So my recommendation, unless you're gonna find one of these on your dealer lots and it's going to be significantly discounted, I would personally wait for a 2026 model year, save a bunch of money, you'll have similar range and performance. And I should be driving the 2026 model year sometime in early June, so stay tuned for my review on that. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 GMC Sierra EV Denali. If you're also looking to see the latest vehicles I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.